Today, guys, we're going to be going over a new build that I decided to put together with the new exotic assault rifle, the STREGA. And this gun is pretty powerful. It could use a few buffs, in my opinion. I'll explain that in a second. I tried using this with Striker, and it just wasn't performing the way I thought it would. But I did find a build that I feel that it capitalizes on the amount of damage this gun can put out. And if you build it around this weapon, it could be one of the meta weapons in the near future. Now, the main reason I say that it doesn't work good with Strikers is because it definitely has a lower RPM. Like, just to compare it, if you want to compare it with the St. Elmo's at 850, this one has a base RPM at 700. You're going to see 150 less RPM, as a very small mag size, so keeping those stacks up while it's doable. You're reloading a lot. I just feel like you just need something that hits harder and works better. And that's why I think with this build, you'll start to see we're able to drop a lot of the enemies very quick, very fast, very efficient. And I feel that's the type of build you guys want to build around the STREGA. It's just that type of weapon. Has a lot of damage, very low RPM, but if you build it with something that packs a punch, it can perform like you're seeing in this gameplay. There's a little bit of legendary gameplay so you guys can see, because you know those enemies hit a little bit harder, they're a little bit tougher. But yeah, I just want to show you a little bit of legendary gameplay to show you how it performs, at least in this first section. And then of course on heroic control points or anything heroic, the build will work, right? I'll tell you, I think this build will get stronger once I get expertise into it. I definitely do not have any expertise into this. I also have the global event directive on, so maybe the best way to test the build is without it. But again, if I'm going to be using it with the global event, with the new directive, right, how we're going to have this, and then also with the enemies hitting harder, definitely this is a build you can run with it. Now, you do have to be careful because some of those enemy modifiers are pretty tough, especially the one that actually repels bullets back at you. So just something for you guys to keep in mind when you are using a build like this that hits very hard. You're going to hit it very hard, as you guys saw there. You saw me just literally take off my own armor. So be very careful. Make sure you keep an eye out for those modifiers that are popping up above the enemy's heads. And if you don't understand the modifiers just yet, well, you could go over to your inventory and you should be able to look at the modifiers there and then see what they do. But again, I think the build is pretty solid. Let's get into the build breakdown. We're going to finish off this enemy right here. And that's pretty much going to just wrap up this gameplay right here. So let's get into it and let's showcase the build itself. So I am using the STREGA. This is the new assault rifle. You can see mine's only proficiency 0, right? Because we're still trying to get proficiency rank on it. So this is the weapon here. If you want to compare it to probably the St. Elmo's, which is a gun you'll probably compare it to, sorry, let me click on that. You'll see that my St. Elmo's is at 20% weapon damage because of its 20% expertise, and it's at 103,000 total damage. This one at 0 proficiency is at 115%. Same build. Thing about the St. Elmo's is it does have a nice mag size of 70 versus 40, and it does have a nice RPM of 850 versus 700. That's why I feel the St. Elmo's still performs better on builds like the Striker. But with this build that I'm using with the STREGA, I think you can perform pretty well with it. So we do have assault rifle damage, health damage, and then I re-rolled this till I got damage strikes out of cover. I do want to max out the health damage once I get some more materials. Right down here, we have a nerve, and this is killing enemy will apply a mark on every enemy within 20 meters. So the way this works is you shoot a target, it will start to mark the next targets around it within 20 meters. Now, the good thing about this is you can stack the marks on top of each other. So if you kill one enemy and then you kill the next enemy, then say you have 3 enemies left, those will have a 2 stack, right? If you kill another enemy, then the final 2 will have a 4 stack, and so on and so on. So the max number of marks that you can be applied to enemy is 5. So you could deal 15% amplified damage per mark, which is pretty good because that's 75% amplified damage at max stack. Will that always happen? No, but the fact that you can get it there, right? Just a 2 stack is an additional 30%. So that is just something for you guys to keep in mind when you guys are doing this. One thing I would love to see this weapon get a buff on is I would love to see it get 5% extra critical hit damage on here. So it could have a total of 10% critical damage on the optic. And then I would love to see the STREGA magazine get plus 30. So it would have an additional 10 rounds. So instead of a 40 round mag, we'd have 50 rounds. I think that'd be a good balance. And then you could have the muzzle slot, which is give another 5% crit chance. That way we can still play with a lot of different builds. I feel that that's what kind of holds this gun back. But with the builds, I do have enough crit chance on this build, and I'll show you guys. And if you look at the stats, we're sitting exactly at 50% crit chance, 166% crit damage, 75% headshot damage, and then 10% damage to targets out of cover because of the weapon itself. But let's get into the build. So we are running the Coyote Mask. It's going to give us weapon damage on here. We have crit chance, crit damage, and we have a crit damage mod. Now we have Pack Instincts on here. Remember, 0 to 15 meters is 25% crit damage. 15 to 25 meters, which you do hit a lot with this weapon, especially this build, you'll get 10% crit chance and 10% crit damage. And then anything past that is 25% crit hit chance. We're sitting at 50%, so it's kind of a waste. Ideally, this is where we want to be. 15 to 25 meters would be the ideal. Now, we are running negotiators, and we are going to be running a 4-piece. So we have 2-piece with a 15% crit chance. 3-piece is going to give us 20% crit damage. We have hostile negotiations. Critical hits mark an enemy for 20 seconds, up to 3 marks. When you critically hit a marked enemy, all other marked enemies take 60% damage dealt. Now, whenever a marked enemy dies, it gains 2% critical hit damage, stacking up 20 times. So that's additional 40% critical hit damage you can have on your builds once you have a full stack, which is really good, right? We go down, we have armor, crit chance, crit damage, and then we have target rich environment, increases hostile negotiations, mark count from 3 to 5. So instead of just being able to mark 3 enemies, I'm able to mark 5 enemies. I really like this, especially with this weapon and how it works. I feel that if I can mark 5 enemies and I get a ton of enemies, some of those stacks can kind of start to multiply a little bit, and I kind of like it. So that's why I went with the chest piece for negotiators. For the holster, we have our second piece of negotiators. We have weapon damage, critical hit damage. For the knee pads, we have our third piece of negotiators. We have armor rolled and crit damage because we do have 1.1 million armor. So you do want to have 2 rolls of armor. For our gloves, we have weapon damage, critical hit damage. And then for our backpack, we have weapon damage, weapon handling, critical damage, and critical hit damage mod. And then we have increased total weapon damage by 25% with vigilance. So I felt like this is a really good piece to put here. You could probably even do unstoppable force if you want to run something a little bit different. You remember Cheska did lose 2% on the critical hit chance, so it's only 8% now, but it used to be 10%, but it's still pretty viable piece to put there. I could personally like it still. The extra damage you get. I could put critical hit chance here, but the way the build is set up, I have enough crit chance on the build because we want to be at 50%. Now, for your skills, you can run a Reviver Hive and Shield, whatever you really want, but ideally, this is how you want to build. The secondary and the pistol, I'm currently just leveling this stuff up, so it doesn't really matter here. But again, this right here is definitely how I would run it. You have the Coyote Mask, Cheska backpack, 4-piece negotiators, and with this, I think it works great. Again, I think it could use a little buff, but it does perform the way I thought it would. And since it has a slower RPM, it doesn't work as good as, say, almost on something like the Strikers. And since it has a less magazine size by 30 bullets, you want something that just puts out a ton of damage with it and capitalizing on the damage. I can imagine once you get this thing up to like 20% expertise, it should be cracking heads. And that's the build right there. So a lot of damage in this build. I think you guys will enjoy it. If you guys have any questions, any recommendations, let me know. I think it's a pretty solid assault rifle. You guys can get this from the battle pass. Remember, it is a free item. You just have to level up your battle pass. Sorry, your battle pass, your season pass to get this. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap up the video here. Appreciate the support, appreciate the love. See you guys in the next one. Nothing but skills is out.